Let me be direct with you from the outset, because what we are witnessing along Jordan's eastern frontier demands directness. What we are witnessing is not a minor diplomatic realignment. It is not a temporary adjustment in regional policy. What we are witnessing is the structural dismantling of America's most reliable Arab alliance in the Levant, happening in real time, and most people do not even realize the scale of what King Abdullah has just initiated. I am looking at a memorandum of understanding that was quietly signed in Amman 72 hours ago between Jordanian and Iranian officials. What this document authorizes is not symbolic trade. It is not cultural exchange. What this document authorizes is the opening of the Karameh border crossing to direct Iranian commercial traffic for the first time since 1979. Think carefully about what this represents. Jordan, a kingdom that has received more than $12 billion in American military aid over the past decade, a kingdom whose air force participated in strikes against Iranian-backed forces as recently as last year, has now formalized economic integration with Tehran. This is not ambiguity. This is not hedging. This is a verdict on American reliability in the region. In the next 18 minutes, I am going to walk you through exactly why King Abdullah made this decision, why the United States could not prevent it, and why what happens next in Amman will determine whether America retains any meaningful influence in the Arab world by 2027. This is the Professor Marandi Report. Subscribe now if you have not already, because what we are about to cover is being actively analyzed by American State Department officials right now, and you are not getting this level of detail from CNN or Fox News. Let's start with geography and economics, because both explain why this border opening represents an existential threat to American strategy. The Karameh crossing sits approximately 90 kilometers northeast of Amman, connecting Jordan directly to Iraq's Anbar province. From Anbar, Iranian trucks can access the highway network that runs through Baghdad and terminates at the Iranian border city of Marandi. What this means in practical terms is that Iran now has a land corridor extending from Tehran through Iraq directly into Jordan, bypassing the Strait of Hormuz entirely, bypassing the Suez Canal entirely, and delivering Iranian goods into the heart of the Levant without a single American checkpoint. The economic implications are immediate. Jordan imports approximately 87% of its energy needs. Over the past 3 years, energy costs have risen by 43%, driven primarily by disruptions in global oil markets and the collapse of Jordan's natural gas pipeline from Egypt. According to reporting by the Jordan Times and confirmed by multiple Jordanian economic analysts, the government in Amman now spends more than 18% of its annual budget on energy subsidies just to prevent riots. 18%. That is more than the kingdom spends on education. King Abdullah's government has been functionally bankrupt for 2 years, kept alive only by loans from the International Monetary Fund and direct cash transfers from Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Iran's offer, detailed in the memorandum I referenced, includes the following: discounted crude oil deliveries at $32 per barrel below market rate, natural gas shipments via truck tanker at rates 40% below current Jordanian costs, and a credit line of $800 million to finance infrastructure upgrades at Jordanian refineries. In exchange, Jordan agrees to normalize diplomatic relations, open the Karameh crossing to unrestricted Iranian commercial traffic, and permit Iranian technical advisors to operate inside Jordanian energy facilities. The agreement was brokered not by European mediators, not by Arab League officials, but by Chinese diplomatic staff operating out of Beijing's embassy in Baghdad. Subscribe if you are watching this and realizing that the Middle East you thought you understood is being redrawn in ways the Western media is not explaining. Now let's talk about what this border opening actually enables, because the implications go far beyond oil trucks. Announcement number 1, the logistics corridor. And this one matters more than anything else happening in the region right now, because it completes Iran's land bridge to the Mediterranean. For 2 decades, American strategists have worked to prevent exactly this outcome. The entire justification for maintaining U.S. troop presence in eastern Syria, the rationale for supporting Kurdish forces in Iraq, the reason Washington pressured Jordan to keep its eastern border militarized, all of it was designed to block Iranian access to a continuous land route from Tehran to Beirut. That barrier no longer exists. With the Karameh crossing open, Iranian supply convoys can now transport weapons, ammunition, and military equipment from Iranian factories through Iraqi territory where American forces have been systematically withdrawn over the past 18 months, directly into Jordan and from Jordan into Syria or onward to Lebanon. The distance from Tehran to the Lebanese border via this route is approximately 1,400 kilometers. A standard freight truck traveling at 70 kilometers per hour can cover that distance in 20 hours. Compare that to maritime shipping, which requires navigating the Persian Gulf, transiting the Strait of Hormuz, where American destroyers maintain constant surveillance, passing through the Suez Canal, where Egyptian authorities conduct inspections, and finally offloading at Syrian ports. that Israel has repeatedly bombed. The land route is faster, cheaper, and immune to naval interdiction. According to Defense Security Asia and confirmed by Jordanian military sources who spoke on condition of anonymity, Iranian Revolutionary Guard logistics officers have already conducted 3 reconnaissance convoys along this route in the past 6 weeks. Each convoy consisted of between 12 and 18 trucks, ostensibly carrying commercial goods, but traveling with Iranian security personnel and using encrypted communication systems. Jordanian border guards were instructed by their commanders not to conduct inspections, not to delay the convoys, not to document their contents. Think carefully about what that means. Jordan's military, which is trained by American Special Forces, which flies American F-16 fighter jets, which conducts annual joint exercises with CENTCOM, has been ordered by King Abdullah himself to facilitate Iranian military logistics. Received. That is announcement number 1. Announcement number 2, the political realignment. This is the part that makes American officials in Washington genuinely panicked because King Abdullah is not acting alone. What we are witnessing is synchronized across 3 Arab capitals simultaneously. On the same day the Karami Agreement was signed, Saudi Arabia's Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan arrived in Tehran for the first official state visit by a senior Saudi royal since 2016. The Saudis announced a bilateral investment fund with Iran totaling $6 billion, focused on port development and energy infrastructure. 24 hours after that, the United Arab Emirates reopened its embassy in Damascus and announced it would begin reconstruction contracts in Syria worth $4.2 billion, funded jointly with Iranian development banks. Do you see the pattern? 3 American allies, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, all moving toward Iran within a 72-hour window. This is not coincidence. This is coordination. And the coordination was managed not by Arab diplomats, not by Iranian negotiators, but by Chinese mediators working through the Belt and Road Initiative framework. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi conducted 16 phone calls with regional leaders in the 2 weeks preceding these announcements. 16 calls. He did not consult with the U.S. State Department once. Stay with me, because this is where the narrative completely changes, and where American failure becomes impossible to ignore. The reason King Abdullah moved toward Iran is the same reason the Saudis normalized with Iran in 2023, the same reason the UAE is investing in Syria, the same reason Egypt is negotiating energy deals with Tehran. The reason is not ideological affinity. It is not anti-American sentiment, though that exists. The reason is survival. Every single one of these governments looked at American performance over the past 5 years and concluded that Washington can no longer guarantee their security or their economic stability. Consider what these governments witnessed. They watched America negotiate the JCPOA nuclear deal, promise to constrain Iran, then unilaterally withdraw from the agreement and impose maximum pressure sanctions. The result? Iran accelerated its nuclear program, expanded its regional influence, and is now closer to weapons-grade enrichment than it was before the deal. They watched America assassinate Qasem Soleimani in 2020 and promised that Iran would be crippled. The result? Iran conducted a direct missile strike on an American base in Iraq, and Washington did nothing in response. They watched America withdraw from Afghanistan and abandon Bagram Air Base, which sits 400 kilometers from Iran's eastern border. They watched American forces evacuate from Iraq's Ain al-Assad base after Iranian militias made the position untenable. They watched American credibility collapse. King Abdullah made a calculation. If he remains aligned exclusively with Washington, he gets IMF loans with austerity conditions that spark protests, he gets energy costs that bankrupt his treasury, and he gets American security guarantees that are worthless the moment Washington decides the Middle East is no longer a priority. If he opens his border to Iran, he gets cheap oil, he gets economic relief, and he gets a neighbor that is not going anywhere. Iran is not leaving the region. America might. That calculation is now driving policy in every Arab capital. Announcement number 3, and this one almost nobody in the mainstream media is connecting correctly. The Karame opening is not just about Iran and Jordan. It is about China's infrastructure strategy in the Middle East. For 8 years, Beijing has been quietly building the economic architecture to replace American influence. The Belt and Road Initiative is not a highway project. It is a system of ports, rail networks, energy pipelines, and trade agreements designed to integrate the Middle East into a China-centered economic order. Look at what China has built in the region since 2018. China operates the port of Haifa in Israel under a 25-year lease. China built and operates the Khalifa port in Abu Dhabi. China is constructing the Gwadar port in Pakistan, which sits at the mouth of the Persian Gulf. China built the rail line connecting Tehran to the Caspian Sea. China financed the highway upgrades in Iraq that now connect Baghdad to the Iranian border. And now, with the Karame crossing open, China has the final link in a logistics chain that connects the Eastern Mediterranean, through the Levant, through Iraq, through Iran, directly to Western China. The entire corridor bypasses American-controlled choke points. The entire corridor settles transactions in yuan, not dollars. The entire corridor operates under Chinese infrastructure standards, Chinese technical protocols, and Chinese political influence. Received. That is announcement number 3. Now, let's talk about what is really happening behind the headlines, because there are two stories playing out simultaneously, and the mainstream media is only covering one of them. The story you are hearing is that Jordan is diversifying its partnerships, that this is pragmatic diplomacy, that King Abdullah is simply responding to economic pressures. That narrative is being pushed by State Department officials who are trying to downplay the significance of what just happened. But that narrative is false. What is actually happening is that America's alliance system in the Middle East is disintegrating, and Washington has no viable strategy to stop it. Think carefully about what this represents. When the United States promises security guarantees to an ally, and that ally watches American troops withdraw from bases across the region, when the United States imposes sanctions on Iran and promises to cripple the Iranian economy, and Iran's economy grows while American allies sink into debt, when the United States demands loyalty and offers nothing but austerity loans in return, that is not diplomacy. That is exploitation. And King Abdullah, whatever his personal feelings about Iran, has decided he can no longer afford that arrangement. The Biden administration responded to the Karameh announcement with a statement expressing disappointment and urging Jordan to reconsider. That statement was ignored. The administration then threatened to review military aid packages to Jordan. That threat was ignored. Why? Because King Abdullah knows the United States cannot afford to lose Jordan. If Jordan falls out of the American orbit entirely, the entire architecture of U.S. military presence in the region collapses. American forces in Iraq depend on logistic support routed through Jordan. American intelligence operations targeting Iranian facilities rely on Jordanian cooperation. American air routes into Syria overfly Jordanian airspace. Cutting off Jordan means cutting off American operational capacity across the Levant. And King Abdullah knows something else. He knows that Saudi Arabia and the UAE have already made their calculations and moved toward Iran. If Washington punishes Jordan for doing what the Saudis have already done, then every other American ally in the region will see that punishment and conclude that American alliance is a liability, not an asset. So the Biden administration is trapped. It cannot punish Jordan without accelerating the exact realignment it is trying to prevent. It cannot reward Jordan without signaling that defiance of American preferences is acceptable. It can only issue statements, and statements do not determine outcomes. If you are an American taxpayer who has been told for decades that your government is supporting allies in the Middle East to secure your interests, what is happening in Jordan right now is not a foreign policy story. It is a return on investment story. $12 billion in military aid over 10 years, and the result is a kingdom that is now economically integrated with America's primary adversary in the region. That is not strategy. That is failure. This pattern has repeated throughout history, and every time it repeats, the outcome is the same. The Peloponnesian War, Athens and Sparta went to war for 27 years. Both sides exhausted themselves. Both sides devastated their economies. And who won? Macedon. Philip II and his son Alexander swept in after Athens and Sparta destroyed each other and conquered the entire Greek world. The parallel is exact. The United States and Iran have been locked in confrontation for 4 decades. Both sides have spent trillions on military buildups. Both sides have exhausted themselves. And who is winning? China. Beijing is expanding its influence while Washington and Tehran bleed resources fighting each other. King Abdullah looked at that pattern and decided he would rather align with the power that is rising than the power that is declining. So where does this leave us? Let me give you 3 clear paths because there is no honest middle ground here. Path 1, the United States accepts the new reality, stops trying to isolate Iran, and negotiates a regional security framework that includes Tehran as a legitimate actor. This would require Washington to abandon 4 decades of policy, accept that its maximum pressure strategy failed, and recognize that Chinese mediation has produced outcomes American diplomacy could not. The likelihood of this path being chosen by the current administration is close to 0. American foreign policy is not driven by pragmatic assessment. It is driven by domestic political narratives, and no American president can survive politically by admitting failure in the Middle East. Path 2, the United States escalates. Washington increases military aid to Israel, expands drone strikes against Iranian proxies, imposes secondary sanctions on any country that trades with Iran, and attempts to coerce Jordan back into alignment through economic pressure. This path leads to further instability, drives more Arab states toward China, and accelerates the decline of American influence. But it allows American officials to claim they are being tough on Iran, which plays well in Washington even if it achieves nothing in the region. Path 3, and this is what I think we are actually watching, the United States gradually withdraws from the Middle East while pretending it is not withdrawing. American troop levels continue to decline. American bases continue to close. American allies continue to realign with China and Iran, but American officials continue to give speeches about enduring commitments and ironclad alliances. This is the path of managed decline, and it is the path that allows everyone in Washington to avoid accountability while the region reorganizes itself around Beijing. I think we are on path 3, and the Karme border opening is confirmation of that trajectory. King Abdullah did not consult with Washington before signing this agreement. He did not ask for American permission. He simply acted, and the United States had no response beyond a press release. That is what decline looks like. Not dramatic collapse, just a steady erosion of influence where allies stop seeking your approval because they no longer need it. Here are the questions I want you to take away. First, how many other American allies are currently negotiating similar arrangements with Iran and China, but have not yet announced them publicly? Second, at what point does the United States formally acknowledge that its Middle East strategy has failed and begin negotiating a regional framework that reflects the actual balance of power rather than the balance of power Washington wishes existed? Third, what happens to American military presence in Iraq and Syria when Jordan is no longer a reliable logistics hub? Tell me in the comments what you think happens next. Tell me if you think the Biden administration has any viable response to this realignment, or if we are simply watching the end of American primacy in the Middle East play out in slow motion. We will keep tracking every development in Amman, in Tehran, in Baghdad, and in Washington. That is what the Professor Marandi report does every single day. Subscribe now. Share this analysis with everyone in your network who is trying to understand why the Middle East is changing so rapidly and why American policy seems so ineffective. Turn on notifications so you do not miss the next update, and we will see you in the next analysis.